Are you going to have a resolution accepting it?
Do you have a pen?
Do you need that? No. I got it. You don't need, you legally don't need a resolution to accept it? Because last, right. Because that would, if you need a resolution, write it up that way. And then tack on to the end also. I gotta get scanned. Here you go.
Please rise.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, help us be passionate and friendly. Help us to be realistic in our judgments. Teach us the good so we may labor for the good. Let us never lose sight of the people we represent. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. You know, when I said you had a lot of class, it's all low.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor Stafford.
Here.
Alderman Lincoln.
Here.
Alderman Sahaski.
Here.
Alderman Weston.
Here.
Alderman Sherman.
Here.
Alderman Thompson.
Here.
Alderman Woodward.
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I remember.
Do we have any additions to the agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to add that we refer to the Planning Commission a change in the site plan for Kim Doyle at 201 Academy Street.
And also, we have a transfer from the Chamberlain's account to the clerk's account for computer upgrade.
Okay. Is there anything else? Very well. Item 1.
Resolved that the Common Council minutes of July 7th, 1998 are hereby approved.
Mayor, adding those minutes that I mentioned a while back when Alderman Woodward was absent on, there was a death in the family or something of that nature, and I stated that I was absent for one meeting, that it would be noted it was a vacation.
It was what?
Noted it was vacation.
Okay.
Was it so noted?
It was noted as absent.
Okay.
That's
Can
yeah.
we modify that?
Yes.
Okay. Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Resolved, the following claims are hereby referred to our city attorney. Notice of motion submitted by Miss Bernice Blake, 6 Dewey Drive, Fulton, New York.
Motion?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Whereas Altel has the capacity to offer long-distance service with its customers, whereas Altel has reviewed the City of Fulton's long-distance bills and their usage, and whereas after review, Altel has estimated a 60% savings in long-distance charges by switching to Altel as its long-distance carrier. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor be authorized to sign a contract between the City of Fulton and Altel to provide long-distance service for the City of Fulton.
You hear a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Whereas the property is known as 64 West 1st Street and 200 Hannibal Street vacant and becoming an eyesore. Whereas the city attorney has been able to resolve the various ownership interests and liens on these properties so that the city can take ownership of them. Now therefore be it resolved that the city chamberlain is authorized and directed to pay $25,000 to Jerry O'Connell, 4983 Cornish Heights Parkway, Syracuse, New York, subject to the following conditions. A, that Mr. O'Connell execute and deliver to the city satisfactions of judgment previously filed against Diane Gregory and James Gregory, which are liens on said properties. B, that Key Bank execute and deliver to the city releases of its mortgages upon the subject properties. And C, that Diane Gregory and Janet Gregory execute and deliver to the city deeds for these properties. Be it further resolved that if the above contingencies are met, the city hereby waives any claims against the Gregorys for taxes, penalties, interest, and water and sewer charges owed on either or both of said properties.
Your Honor, I'd like to move that if I could. And I'd also like to thank David Hawthorne for his 7 months' worth of work. It was taking John Sullivan 48 months, and we didn't have anything after the Bullard administration. And I'd just like to thank David Hawthorne for his work on this.
I'd like to ask a question, though. Now that we're in the business of buying houses, what are we going to do with them after we own them?
These will end up being demolished. I believe that they are beyond repair.
Do we have money to do that, or CDA? Or
CDA.
On the 64 West First, it's in the zone. 200 Hannibal is not, so we're not sure yet where we'll get the money or what.
If they tear it down, does that mean they control the property? No. Or can we keep it and then turn around and sell it at auction? Or
Still will be owned by the city.
John, what about that one next door to it?
What?
There's two of them there.
Right, there's an old church, and then there's a house.
Right.
Includes both.
Yeah.
Oh, that is both of them?
Both of them.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, I went over and looked at it, and I said, geez. Good.
What's the lot size of that property, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm just concerned that if you tear that building down, will somebody be able to buy that property and build on it in the future? Because there's been problems in the past here in the city, tearing down buildings and then it doesn't meet code as far as setbacks and such.
That, I believe, is a double wide
It's a double lot.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Estimating it's about 70 by 130.
Because there are two buildings side by side on it right now.
All right.
Yeah, I'll second John's motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I think John will drive the bulldozer, won't you, John?
I'll be right in the front seat.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item. Yeah, that's what he requested. Yes.
Whereas the meeting of the council held on July 7th, a resolution was passed to deny a parking lot to be placed on the City of Fulton right-of-way on the South 3rd Street side of the property located at 211 East Broadway. Whereas by memo dated July 8th from Mayor Michael K. Stafford to Common Council President John R. Lincoln requesting that the Common Council take action regarding the lawn area between the curb and the sidewalk which has been removed. Now therefore be it resolved that the DPW Commissioner be authorized to replace the sidewalk in the lawn area between the curb and the sidewalk at 211 East Broadway.
I will move that.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Whereas the city clerk was authorized and directed to re-advertise for a public hearing to be held on July 21st at this meeting relative to allowing Syracuse SMSA Limited Partnership to use the Water Tower and Water Tower Hill for cellular antennas. Whereas the Common Council at their meeting of June 16, 1998, asked the city attorney to write an opinion of the legality of the 5-year lease agreement with Syracuse SMSA Limited Partnership. Whereas letter dated June 18, 1998, from the city attorney David Hawthorne to the Common Council, he has given them his legal opinion of the said 5-year lease agreement. Whereas the public hearing was moved from July 7th to July 21st in order to have a full complement of the city aldermen to attend regarding the issue. Mayor Stafford will declare the hearing open.
The representatives from Frontier Cellular have requested that they be allowed time to make a presentation prior to the start of this hearing, and I have said that they would be able to do that.
Thank you, Mayor. David Levy with Nixon, Hargrave, Devins, and Doyle, attorneys for Syracuse MSA Limited Partnership, also known as Frontier Cellular. With me tonight is John Engelberg, the project manager with Frontier Cellular in connection with this project, and RIT professor, Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT, Professor Frank Scaramano, who has been good enough to come to make about a 20-minute presentation. Mayor, we could use about 5 minutes to set up. Dr. Scaramano has a projector, so if you don't mind.
With your permission, what I'll do is I'll move the screen back a little bit, and I can slide that table out. Sure. You gentlemen will have to turn around. I apologize.
Just need a couple shots of mouth.
I apologize, I only have 4 overheads, so it seems a little overkill to set this up. How's that look?
Maybe you're setting this up.
I worry a little bit about folks in the back. Can you see this? I could raise the screen up. Can people see that? Okay. Yeah. Or I could raise it up a little higher. I can even go off the wall. Don't you want to move back a little bit? This will go up. I'm not a screen wizard, so I'm not sure how to get that higher. Can folks see that? I apologize if you can. I also have handouts of all the overheads. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Frank Scaramano. Quite long. I apologize for that. There's not much I can do about it. I am a professor in the College of Engineering, full professor at RIT. Been there 17 years. I also have an environmental consulting firm. I've been doing environmental consulting for about 25 years. The last 10 of which I've spent a considerable amount of time talking about cell sites, and in particular health effects for cell sites. These slides are exactly what you have on the handouts. I brought about 30 cents, so some people may have to share. If there aren't enough for the council, we can get you a couple more. There's some extras over there. This first slide is just some nomenclature so that everybody's speaking the same language. The language of electromagnetic fields is somewhat daunting, so I thought I'd put this slide up. Basically, on this slide, you can describe electromagnetic radiation, if you will, or electromagnetic fields by either frequency or wavelength. There's a unique relation between the two. This chart shows the entire electromagnetic spectrum, all the way from X-rays and cosmic gamma rays, cosmic rays, X-rays, down to extremely low frequency, 60 hertz fields, which are produced by power lines. It's a very broad band. There's orders of magnitude in the size, length, wavelength, or the frequency. These are some of the terms that are used. I want to just pull out hertz for frequency, because I'll use frequency primarily. 1 hertz is 1 cycle per second. These are some of the terms that are used to describe different portions of the band, extremely high frequency down to extremely low frequency, and everything in between. In general, the communications bands, it was discovered that we could communicate into these fields. The communication bands are pretty much in the middle. And I have another slide where that is blown up, and that's the second sheet on that handout. And this shows the middle of that electromagnetic spectrum, the part that we commonly use for communication. And again, you can either describe the frequencies by wavelength or by frequency, and I'll use frequency primarily. And you'll notice that in this middle band, along the top, we've identified the bands that are used for AM broadcast, 500 to 16 kilohertz. Here's the kilohertz. So when you tune your dial to 570 WSYR, is that yours? You're actually at 570 kilohertz in frequency on the radio wave that they're using to communicate with you. And we go up the band and we see that we have TV, certain channels here, FM broadcasts, other TV channels, a broadband for UHF television, and then higher frequencies. I've also stuck on that graph is the place where cellular telephone frequencies are. And you notice that cellular telephone frequencies are a portion of the high end of the UHF television band. These are the same exact signals that are put out by UHF television stations. And in fact, what happened was, when I was young, everybody thought they were going to get 100 channels on their TV through UHF bands. And then cable came along. And the UHF bands were not being used. It was more economic to distribute those extra channels all to the cable. And so the UHF bands were not being used. The FCC said, these are valuable. We're going to give them to the cellular telephone companies to use. And that's why cellular telephone has the upper portion of the UHF band. Let me leave this up here just a little bit more because I want to talk about two things. One is the kind of wave that is produced, the kind of frequency, and that kind of tells you what kind of animal this is. And again, just to emphasize, this is a UHF television signal. It's in the broadcast band. These things have been around and have been widely used for about 70 years now, since the 20s when radio became big. There's been a lot of experience with these kinds of frequencies and having them broadcast out into the community. That's the kind of signal it is. Another important part of it, though, is the power that's put out. How powerful is that signal? If you will, how bright is the light? And the way cellular telephone works, the signal has to be confined to a fairly small geographic area called the cell. That's how you get the term cellular. That way, those same frequencies, there's only a few in there, can be reused over and over in different, all around the country, because each cell doesn't interfere with each other. By contrast, broadcast, the other bands up there, try to get a whole market. So the Syracuse television stations will broadcast over a very broad area. As a result, their power at their transmitter is very, very high. Now I'll contrast some of the numbers. AM broadcast stations, as you know, generally in the 30,000 to 50,000 watts. You always hear about 50,000 watts going out. You contrast that with FM broadcasts, they're generally around 10 to 30,000 watts. Television, UHF television in particular, several million watts, up to 5 million watts. And then we contrast that with the power output for a typical cellular site at 100 watts per channel usually a dozen or 2 dozen channels, so you're getting 1,200 to 2,400 watts. It's orders of magnitude less power being put out, less of a field being created around it. Now, I said that this has been studied for many years, and as a result of all the research that went into it, and it really started because there was some high power exposure during World War II with radar in particular. So I'm sorry, this is the one I wanted there. As a result of all of the research that was done over the years, and I know Dr. Gill, we talked a little bit about that last month, the 10,000 papers that went into the ANSI recommendation. The FCC looked at all this data over the course of a few years. They consulted with the EPA, and they came up with what they thought were very prudent exposure standards, values that people can be exposed to without any possibility of a harmful effect. And what they've done is come up with a standard over a range of frequencies for both occupational exposure, 8 hours a day, and also the dash line, general public exposure, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week over a lifetime. And these are the kinds of limits that are there. Now, this bar just shows you where the frequencies are for cellular, not the power level. And so you can see for general public exposure, we're basically at around, I'll give you the number exactly, 550 or so in the units of power density, milliwatts per centimeter squared. Actually, it's got 0.5 on that chart.
Is that for 1 antenna?
I'm sorry?
Is that for 1 antenna?
No, total for everything. Okay. Now, if you have different frequencies, you have to wait them to add them up. But at a particular frequency, you could have as many antennas as you want, as long as the power output gives you a feel of that strength. On this last handout, I have 2 tables. The top one is basically a summary of the recommendations of a number of different bodies, as well as some limits that have been enacted by states in terms of occupational exposure, 8 hours a day, and general public exposure. And you can see in this frequency band at 825 megahertz here, they all pretty much line up. There are some discrepancies, especially at the very low frequencies, power line frequencies, and some of the higher frequencies. But generally, at this kind of frequency, there's pretty broad agreement, both in this country and internationally, on these sets of standards. And you can see the important one for us is this 550. And this is in microwatts per centimeter squared. It's a measure of how strong the field is at a particular point in space. What I've done on the bottom here is I've done a worst-case calculation of what the power density would be at 2 locations at this site. And I've done this very conservatively, following the FCC guidelines and doing the calculation. And I've done 2 points. One is at ground level, right under the water tank, assuming the antenna is pointing straight down, which it's not. And then also at ground level at the closest school property line, because the school property is right next to this. And what I've calculated, and again, this is very conservative, is 30 microwatts per centimeter squared at ground level right under the tank. Less than, and I use the less than because it's very conservative, 5.6 microwatts per centimeter squared at the school property. Again, comparison is to be made to the 550, the permitted exposure level, which is considered safe. It already has a factor of safety of 50 in it. The reason I say that these are conservative and have the less than sign is what I've done to do the calculation is I've used the most conservative formula that the FCC has, which includes 100% ground reflection, which doesn't happen. It also assumes that the transmitter, all 12 channels are operating continuously, and that doesn't happen. What happens is somebody makes a call, and they talk to it, and if there are 12 people making calls, then all 12 channels are working. Generally, they're not all working all the time, but I assume that they're all working continuously. Also, I assume that the antenna radiates isotropically, meaning that the signal comes out and goes in all directions at the maximum power. In reality, the antennas are such that the fields go out horizontally more than vertically. They're kind of directed outward so that people can pick them up further away. They don't point to the ground. But anyway, assuming that they did point to the ground, then it was a sphere and the signal was coming out at the maximum power all around. These are the kinds of numbers that you get. And again, when you compare it to the accepted standard, which is again very conservative, you see that we're basically 1% or 100th of the permissible standard. And that, of course, will drop off further as you move further away.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question?
If you wait till I'm finished, I'll be happy to answer any questions, although it's your discretion.
Yeah, please hold questions till we finish the presentation.
And I'm almost done. In terms of cellular, I don't think there's any concern, any rational concern, for these base station facilities where you have a tower and a transmitter. The only studies I've seen that even suggest a problem with cellular, or PCS for that matter, is the dose that people get when they hold a phone directly against their head. And even in that, it's controversial whether there's an effect or not. But at least there's some suggestion and there's some study going on. There are no studies that I know that even suggest that at this frequency, at these kinds of power levels, there could be any kind of health effect in humans. If there was, we would be seeing it already in the population around broadcast centers. Now, I don't know the situation in Fulton, I don't know the situation in Syracuse, but I know in Rochester, most of the broadcasters are just clustered on one big hill. And there are people living all around that hill, and there are no problems. And there haven't been. Is it all? I'm sorry?
Are the stations south of the country, the towers?
No, right in the city. Right in the city. Yep. And in fact, right in my neighborhood, we have an AM station. Yeah. My neighbors back up right to it. Not only don't they have a concern, but they went out en masse to oppose an office building there because they like the towers better. No traffic, no noise. And I can also offer a personal anecdote. I sit as an advisor to the Frank School Board. And I was sitting there the night that Cell 1 came in, proposed towers in the, basically a belfry on the high school roof. And I understand Frontier is now doing the same thing, so there's going to be 2 providers on the high school. In my town, my daughter's in high school. My son goes to the middle school, which is the next building over, and will be in high school. And I had no concern at all over those facilities. I have a lot more concern with them driving the school bus to school than I do with anything to do with the cellular facility. So in summary, I don't think there's a basis for concern about health effects from this type of facility. I don't think there are any studies that show that. If there are, and somebody's found some new information, I'd love to see it. I try and scan this up, try and keep abreast of it as best as I can, and I can be happy to provide folks with some websites that summarize all the data, summarize the research, and I think people would agree that there isn't anything in terms of this kind of facility at these kinds of frequencies. There is a lot of confusion regarding EMF from power lines, and that seems to be the thing that gets mixed up in the soup all the time. But this is far different than that. So with that, I'll close, and at your discretion, I'll answer questions or not. It's up to you. Or I can hold off and try to respond to the comments that are made during the hearing.
Well, if anyone has any direct questions at this time, please come forward, state your name and address, and
Hi, my name is Rick Bergman. I'd like to ask the professor.
Please, can the speakers give their names and address?
name and address, please.
705 Highland Street, Fulton, New York, 13069. I was just curious on the, when you had mentioned that you took a worst case scenario and you said that you had taken 12 channels all broadcasting at the same time. Is that 12 channels per antenna?
My understanding is that you have 12 channels total that could radiate in one direction.
Okay, well, it was my understanding that, and maybe you guys could correct me, on one of your Frontier Cellular websites, they were boasting that that each antenna could carry as much as 17 channels, and there's going to be 3 of them. So now we're talking 56 channels, not 12. So
12 in one direction, though. It says power in one direction. So I'll let John answer that.
John McWhorter, project manager with Frontier Cellular. There are certain applications in very heavy urban areas where we may have 3 sector sites where we'll have 3 sets of antennas, and each set could transmit up to 17 channels, as you said.
100 watts per channel?
Correct. In this particular case, we're talking about an omnidirectional site. We could have, if approved by the board, 2 or 3 omnidirectional antennas. And initially, we'll have about 7 or 8 channels. I told Frank 12 to be conservative, so those numbers will probably be even lower.
But that's per antenna.
No, that's total.
Omni means that they're going to transmit together the same signal.
And in the contract, it says that that's all you'll ever maintain there, and you'll never expand or sublet any of the tower site to co-locate with the front cellular one. I mean, I haven't read the contract, but doesn't the contract say that you can expand and put as many things
If
on
I
you want?
recall, there is no provision for subletting. I don't believe you can sublet.
But what I think when I saw Mr. Tetro read the contract off of the one tape, it said that you guys could install, update, modify, and you could do, in other words, you could do a lot of things on that water tower other than just put 3 antennas and leave it at 12 channels. That's why I got the impression. Madam, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that what's in the contract? Doesn't it say that that they can do pretty much mix? And I guess I have another question while they're looking at that. You had mentioned, now Dr. Ely, who actually represented the Frontier, had actually made the claim, or made the statement, that there are other members in the quote-unquote scientific community that do take a different viewpoint than you're espousing right now, all right? And now that's not me saying it, that's your own representative, your own consultant saying that. And that's where we kind of have a problem with it, because if you could tell me what you just told me, that, or told us that everybody it's a completely unanimous decision or unanimous agreement that these things are perfectly safe, yet Dr. Ely, and I've seen in like the country of New Zealand, they don't have, I mean, why, if it's so safe, how come a whole entire country bans them next to schools? And I also like to state for the record that I like cellular technology. I use cell phones. I'm only concerned about the long-term exposure that the kids are going to get from the, I mean, I know the FCC, the Telecommunications Act, is this big shield that says it's safe, and you know, but I mean, it hasn't been studied for 40, 50 years, not cellular frequencies. And especially, and then you're also talking about analog, I believe. That's what my next question was. Are you talking about analog, or are you talking about digital? On your worst case scenario.
Which question do you want me to answer first?
Are you talking about?
My understanding is right now you're dealing with analog channels first.
That is correct.
And then when you switch to digital later, they're still in the same frequency. Let me go back though. The scientific community is very broad. In fact, you go on the website, you can find people that are in the World Wide Web, you can find people who call themselves scientists that have all kinds of backgrounds in science. If you drew a bell curve of scientific opinion, I'd say that you get some fringe that does not believe that, how to put this, that a lot more work needs to be done. Let's put it that way. I think the vast majority of people that look at the data, that look at this, say this is not a problem. What may be a problem, as I talked about, that people are concentrating on are extremely low frequencies, power lines, handheld phones close to the head, especially European digital phones, which are much higher power. But I don't know of anyone that's looking at it rationally, that doesn't have an axe to grind, that doesn't have a business to generate, that is saying that seriously that there's any kind of potential health effect from this type of facility.
Well, I think they keep saying it's business.
You may want to note also that the city itself has a tower that's broadcasting right at that site.
Right, it's a
radio broadcast.
Right, it's a radio broadcast. I think it's one channel or whatever.
Right. There's not a big difference in terms of the frequency they're transmitting and the frequencies that are coming out of here, the type of wave that's going to be produced.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the other questions were.
Well, the other question I had was when you did your workup on 12 channels, not 56, and also I was wondering if it was based on the frequency level of the digital PCS, or was it based on the analog?
It's not PCS. This is cellular.
Well, I know, but the Frontier Cellular website talks about the contract with Lucent that they should, and they were bragging about how they'll be upstate New York will be completely digital by the end of the summer. Well, so I mean, hello. Can you address that for me?
The FCC gave us a specific frequency range to use. We have been typically for the past 10 years dividing that up into lots of little analog signals. What we'll be doing now with CDMA is we'll have 6 or 7 CDMA channels. And the advantage to that is the fact that if this were a CDMA site, our total transmit power would be only 100 watts. The CDMA allows you to stack multiple conversations onto one 100-watt channel. So in essence, we're still using the same frequency band that we had before. It is a very similar technology. There are some changes to make the signal digital. But in essence, if this site, again, it is approved once we started off with analog channels, and eventually over a couple of years we migrated over to CDMA digital. And at that point, you can actually talk about less power. As I said, you don't need 1 or 2 channels at 100 or 200 watts each, or at 100 watts each, excuse me, for a total of 200 watts to supply the capacity that we need in this area. Right. So our total transmit power will actually decrease in the future.
But it is a different, the analog is not exactly the same as far as the frequency.
It is the same. It is the same frequency.
Same frequencies. It's not higher up on that chart you gave us.
PCS. The other thing I showed you on the chart is a different area. That's Sprint, you hear about Sprint, and
right.
I think OmniPoint, although I'm not sure about OmniPoint, what frequency. They were assigned by the FCC. The FCC, by the way, they auctioned off these frequencies, the UHF frequencies, made a lot of money. They also found that the companies were oversubscribed. Had 2 competitors in each market, but not enough. So in this case, Frontier. And so they auctioned off other blocks, and that's where the PCS frequencies are. And I think there's going to be 3 carriers in that frequency range. I put those on that chart just to show you where they are. But their frequencies are between 800 and 900 megahertz, and I forget the specific frequencies that Frontier has and Cell One has, but they're in that band.
And one last question. I don't have my particular notes with me, but when I went on to the FCC has a very large web page or website, and I saw something about when they came out with the Telecommunications Act of 1996, they reestablished those standards, and they turned out to be like, and they dropped them like they made them lower than the original standards. The original standards, they said, oh, cellular technology, yada yada yada, it's great, it's safe. But yet, when they came out with the Telecommunications Act, they didn't drop it like 10% or 5%. They dropped like 80%. Now that seems a little extreme. Like that's like to me that sends up a warning signal of like, well, wait a minute. If it's so safe and the government said it was so great, why did they change so radically on the amount of exposure that say, well, we better lower not 10% but 80%, and that just says, well, what's going to happen in 10 years? When people start coming up with problems and they say, well, wait a minute, we better like the government. I mean, I know the government's looks out for our best interest. They have thousands and millions of dollars expended on our well-being, but yet they did tell us that asbestos was safe for many, many years, and then people started coming up with problems, and there's a myriad of things that the government, well-meaning as they are, don't always hit the nail on the head. And our only concern is again, if there's any doubt, any risk at all, and there are, contrary to what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I respect your credentials, but there are differences of opinion out there. I mean, it isn't an isolated incident. People are taking up concern with this, and with the phones, you said yourself that there is concern. There people are looking at when you take the phone to your head and talk for 10 minutes. Well, if that's 10 minutes, that's short-term exposure. What about 24 hours a day? I mean, I know they've done research on the thermal effect and all that, and I guess they're starting to do more study about the biological effect, but our whole concern is why take why put it next to the school? Come on, I mean, just you guys got other alternative sites, and Frontier espouses constantly how they want to do good for the community, and they spent $3 million in 1996 and 97 to be a good member of the community, to keep people's to well-being. Well, I would hope that Frontier would keep that consistent with their campaign and move this or take another site. That's all I ask.
So you're very well spoken, and I don't think I'm going to be able to convince you. It seems like you've made up your mind.
Well, I have.
First, let me talk about the FCC standard. The portion of the spectrum where they made a change over the I think it was 82 recommendation, was at the low frequencies. The part where people are yelling about the 60 hertz fields, the very low frequencies. My understanding is that this central portion of the frequency range, they didn't make a change. In terms of the handheld and being 10 minutes, that's a much higher power output. That's being your head right next to the antenna. It would be like you standing up on a water tower, putting your head next to the antenna. The fields drop off like 1 over r squared. I apologize for using that kind of term. But they drop off very rapidly as you move away from them. And that's why there's a concern when people put the phone right next to their head. But there's no concern when it's up on a tower, even if you're right under it. See, that's in my opinion. And again, I don't think there is any real rational difference of opinion. There are some, and I'll use the terms, fear mongers out there that are rattling people up over this issue. And I think it would be best to spend that time on the real risks. And if there are any real risks, we're going to see it first from the broadcast channels, from the broadcast stations and their towers that are in close proximity, same frequencies. And you said this hasn't been well studied, cellular frequencies. That's why I put that up there. These are TV signals. These have been around for 60 years in very high power. And there hasn't been any place where you're seeing any kind of effect at these kinds of power levels. It's very, very simple, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm sure you can find some, and I can give you some websites where it'll feed your fears as much as you'd like. And I can give you some others that won't.
Are there any other direct questions? If not, we will now open it up to public comment.
Excuse me, Mayor, does the council have any questions for Dr. Skirmamama while he's out?
I'm not leaving, so if you have any questions later, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave this here for now.
Certainly. Are there any further comments on this subject?
Good evening. Elizabeth Baker Bergman, 705 Highland Street, Fulton, New York, 13069. As some of you may know, I lost my father 3 weeks ago. And if there's anything he taught me, that you should always do the right thing, and you're a better person for it. I know that doing the right thing isn't always the easiest road to take. In fact, it is usually the hardest. I'm here tonight to ask the Common Council to do the right thing. By that, I mean to stand by the community concern of the placement of the cellular antennas and to vote to rescind the contract with Frontier at the Fairgrave site. Because this issue, or similar, will keep coming around us, like Valmy, like Granby, and now Fairgrave, I ask for a moratorium, and in that time, that the Common Council take a close look at our zoning and make appropriate regulations for our city in this matter. For Frontier, my husband and I did go into your website, and I've pulled up a couple of your pages here. It speaks well of your success and growth, and your company is certainly able to do the right thing. And this doesn't mean trying to choose another site located near our school or close residence. One of the successes that Frontier cites here on their website is that they are making a difference. Frontier Communications is committed to being a good neighbor, committed to being a good neighbor through community involvement. Well, we are all involved, as are you. I ask for Frontier to choose a site that shows Frontier to be the good neighbor that they claim they are. I ask that you stand by your word.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue?
Good evening. My name is Al Squitieri, 317 South 3rd, Fulton, New York, 13069. Before I get started, this is a public hearing, and I asked for time not to be interrupted, as this gentleman asked for and was granted. And I don't want to be intimidated by an attorney because this is a city council meeting. This is a public hearing. I didn't know I was coming for a Greek lesson tonight, but that's what I got. But I'm going to try and keep it on two simple points. One, we're told by the federal government, our protectors, that nuclear plants are safe. We know they're not. We have waste we can't get rid of. No matter what we do with it, it's still dangerous. We're told by our federal government that microwaves are safe, provided you don't stare into it, put your cat or your plant behind it, check the seals, and don't go anywhere next to this thing within 50 feet if you have a pacemaker, but government tells us it's safe. And we're told that this is very low frequency. I'm told if I have too many x-rays, it'll accumulate. X-rays aren't safe because the technicians are hiding behind lead shields. Eventually it accumulates. I don't know if you gentlemen ever visited a hospital where there are children suffering from leukemia. I don't know if there's a doctor in the house or not, but I know their immune systems aren't developed, and that's why we have more children with leukemia than we do adults. Why do we want to add to the problems we already have? I raised 10 children, they're all married, they have children of their own, and I have 2 grandchildren over in Fairgrave. We're told that the power lines are not the same type of frequency, but power companies all over the country are putting them below ground. It's not just cosmetic. I know that the government is pushing particular things, and we, the people, accept it because Big Brother said it's okay. I want you gentlemen to think about the children. I hate to sound like a Washington politician or any other politician. We use children for excuses. They won't be rocket scientists because Congress won't give us $50 billion to NASA or any other baloney. And a lot of local agencies will use the poor and the handicapped to run $10 million agencies, payroll that is. But I have to tell you, the bottom line is our children. I want to give you another view. All over the country, small cities, towns, and states, senators, county legislators, councilmen are saying no to Big Brother. Now, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but the law tells us that we cannot reject these people over health reasons. Is that true? Okay.
That's true.
We have men in this country and women who are saying no to the government. Even though they get slapped around and beat up, they still say no. Now, I'm going to ask you gentlemen, Mr. Sherman, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Woodard, Mr. Lincoln, Mr. Saharsky, and Mr. Weston, by name. I want you to do something tonight. I want you to say to the federal government, no, you're not going to come into the city of Fulton and tell us what to do, even if you get slapped down. 2, I want you to tell your cellular company that you can't buy us for $140 a week. That's $23 a piece. Are you worth $23? I want you to tell your neighbors that, yes, we care about you. That's why we're sitting here. You come first. Tell your children we care about your health and your well-being. Tell yourselves in the mirror, yes, I did what's right. I like the man in the mirror. I like what he's saying. I like what I did. I'm proud of what I did. So why don't you start taking a stand? I have dreams for Fulton. This could be a start. You know, it's like asking for snow in July. I shouldn't say that. In Fulton, we might get snow in July. But I want us to become self-sufficient. Stop going out for the manna from heaven. Stop bringing in outside companies. Stop bringing in outside funding. Stop running to the pork barrel. Let's start taking care of ourselves, becoming an independent city, and say, hey, look at this little city in upstate New York did. So tonight I want you to vote and say, no, we care. This thing has doubts, and when in doubt, don't. And I'm sure they're not going to sign a paper saying that it's absolutely safe, and if anybody gets sick within 10 miles, we'll pay all the expenses. I'm sure they're not going to say that. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And I want to know that you're the men that I know individually and personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Mayor, I'd like to read a prepared statement before we vote on this, please. May I?
Trying to answer someone else. Okay.
As I have previously stated, I am opposed to the antennas being placed near the Redgrave Elementary School. In my opinion, children have a delicate developing immune system and nervous system that may be vulnerable to environmental hazards, and the elderly defense system starts to break down as they get older. Many studies have been done by respected and notable individuals possessing high educational and research credentials. Depending upon who you read, there are those that fall on the positive side and those that fall on the negative side. In short, there is, in my opinion, no conclusive evidence. If we cannot fully be safe and not sure, why then take the risk? And I will vote against this resolution on the antennas.
Thank you. Sir?
My name's Ed Waldron, 702 Highland. I know in here that there's certain amounts of power and so forth that New York State Health Department allows. The state health or the state education department will not allow these antennas on the Oswego College campus for health reasons. There's one agency against another agency in the state of New York. Just so noted. I know they don't allow it for that reason. And there's between 6,000 and 7,000 students up there during the campus year. Okay?
Thank you. Are there any others that would like to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Yes.
Could we have an opportunity just to respond to a couple of the comments?
All right.
I would like to talk about some of the things that were raised, since they are all centered around the health issue. First of all, the gentleman was talking about x-rays and accumulation of dose. This is the primary problem with the public understanding of this. It's like comparing a locomotive to a toy train in terms of potential health effect. I'm not aware of any studies that talk about leukemia in children and this type of radiation at this type of frequency. That's where the power line frequencies, the 60 hertz, comes in. That's where that whole research and that whole question about the 60 hertz power line comes in. And it's true, all over the country, people are saying no to cell towers. But the primary reason is visual. They don't want a tower in a residential area. It is not health effects, although that gets dragged in. The reason there's federal preemption on that issue is precisely because it's an emotional issue and people are ill-informed about it. And that's why the FCC said we're going to have a communication system in this country. We cannot allow these irrational voices to dictate on this issue. And with all due respect, you said there's a lot of studies, some come on one side, some come on the other. I would love you to give me a list of what you read so I can figure out which studies I'm missing, because there aren't any as far as I can tell. that even suggests that at these power levels, at these frequencies, there are any potential health effects.
Excuse me.
And we cannot, and if I can finish, it's true, we can't be assured that it's safe. We cannot prove that something won't happen. I can't prove that there will be no health effects, just like I can't prove to my son that there's no boogeyman. All I can do is, you cannot prove something won't happen scientifically. All I can do is set up the conditions under which I'd expect to see the boogeyman, and then see if he's there. Open the closet door, look under the bed, whatever. If I don't see him, I haven't proved he doesn't exist. Scientists have been trying, especially over the last 10 years, to prove that there's some kind of health effect, especially for cellular. And with all due respect to however many attorneys there are in the room, there's a lot of attorneys that would love to find the link so that they can bring the class action suit. It just hasn't happened. There aren't any. The one suit that created a lot of problems, a lot of public concern, was the person in Florida that sued because their wife got a brain tumor and they said it was due to the cell phone. That got a lot of publicity, got people all upset. What didn't get quite as much publicity is the fact that the judge threw it out because there was no evidence at all indicating a connection. And two, that the woman had a brain tumor before she got the phone. So this is how the public perception is created, that there's a problem. I just want to comment about SUNY Oswego. I'm not sure what the problem is or what the policy is of the New York State Education Department. I can tell you, I've been up to Oswego. If they're concerned about this, they should shut down all the power plants right next to the school, because the air quality is a lot more of a concern, and the waste from those plants, than anything that can happen from this. Also, being a college professor, I suppose I shouldn't say it, but what students are exposed to in the labs in college is a lot worse than anything they're going to get from a cell tower on campus. So I can't speak to that active policy, but I think I can speak to a potential health effect. Thank you for allowing me to.
Your Honor, there's one thing that I heard that kind of bothers me. I forgot your name. I don't think I could Frank. I've had a lot of information before me, not tonight, but that I've read both here, and, 2 and 4, and 4 and against, and I'm not sure on the health things, but a lot of the people around the country are concerned about the health effects, but they're using the visual effects because the federal government said you can't think that there's health effects and fight against these because of health effects, because you'll lose. So don't you think in your mind, maybe logically thinking, that they're using the visual effects because you've already told them they can't use the health effects?
Well, I'm sure that's probably true in some places. But I think in other places, it's the genuine concern about the visual effects and the health effects.
Well, visually, they don't look good either. I've seen the one they built across the river, and that didn't impress me, but I do think that there's some legitimate concerns. My own personal feeling is I wish we didn't do it up there. I know we have to let you in the city, but I wish we could work to find something a little more appealing to the public, and and like that. I just think there's a good faith that would be that way. We do not have a resolution on this tonight, but I think that someone ought to offer one.
Once we close the...
Okay, well, I looked through my paperwork, I didn't see anything yet.
No, there isn't.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. Okay.
Certainly.
Oh, okay. No, okay. Sorry about that.
Sir, you were going
Mr. Scuteri, could you come to the mic, please?
I'm sorry.
We're going to vote on it.
This whole premise of health is on doubt. And you prefixed every sentence with I think. You never said once, I know for sure. The second thing you did, aside from me being emotionally and whatever else you call me, you said you're not sure if there's a boogeyman or isn't a boogeyman. You can't prove if it's harmful or not harmful. What you're continuously telling us is there's doubt. And as long as there's doubt and you can't guarantee that it's safe, we don't want it. It's that simple. And I don't know if you're a paid witness for the company or what you are, but we know what we feel, and it's not all emotion. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Clarify, yes, I am paid by the company to come here. So there's no one misunderstanding. But also, my opinions are not for sale. It's true. Again, I cannot prove that there's no harm. Just like I can't prove that there's no harm in me using this pen. But there are certain things that you look at and you say, is there even a potential? And then you make a judgment. Now, I certainly wouldn't suck on a pen to get the pen, to get the ink in my mouth. But in my normal usage of the pen, I don't have any problem with the fact that I'm not going to get cancer from using a pen. And I feel the same way about cellular tower being close to a school.
I may add this, Your Honor, that our school district is opposed to this site also. I just want that on the record, please.
Is there anyone else?
Yes, Frank, addressing one point that you directed to me, the pros and cons, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be corrected by the people that have been here, I believe Dr. Ely's mentioned that there are scientists that write with the positive, and there is also scientists that write with the negative. And that's where I took that context from.
Yes, and primarily on the low frequencies. That's where there's the debate, the power line frequency. I don't think there's any debate about this kind of level at this kind of frequency. There is debate about whether or not you hold a cell phone up to your head if you have a problem. Okay? And that's, again, that's a question when they're looking at it. But at these kinds of power levels, I don't think there is a question. And if you can find somebody who's going to say there is, I think you're going to find 600 people and say that there's not, that have studied the issue.
Is there anyone else?
I would just like to read from a testimony from Jeffrey S. Steinberg, Special Counsel of the Federal Communications Commission. This was sent to me by Michael Bragman, who's also working on this issue. It is a discussion of local governments and the Telecommunications Act of 1996. And one section, Section 332C7 of the Communications Act establishes a national facility siting policy for personal wireless services. Section 332C7 broadly preserves state and local government authority over decisions regarding the placement, construction, and modification of personal wireless service facilities.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Comments from the council, or?
Do you want to make a comment?
When this first came before us, the agreement came before us, we asked the city attorney to determine its legality and to look at it. And he has determined from a letter that he has sent to all of us that it is in violation of our charter to issue a lease without sending it out to bid. So therefore, I would make a motion to rescind that original agreement.
I'll second it.
In addition, I would comment at this time that there's no question that the siting of cellular facilities are going to be happening. I think we need to issue a moratorium. I would oppose a resolution to the council to issue a moratorium for a period of 60 days. I would then also recommend that we send this to the Environmental Standing Committee and then to the Planning Commission.
Is there a second on the second?
I'll second it.
Point of order. We need to first close the public hearing, and then we'll handle the resolutions one at a time. So if there's no further discussion, I declare this public hearing closed. Would you read the first motion?
Motion to rescind the 5-year lease agreement with Syracuse SMA Limited Partnership.
And the reason for that? The reason for
the charter determines that it is for any lease agreement that'll be sent out for bid.
Okay.
Yes.
We want that included in that resolution?
Mm-hmm. Based on a legal opinion of the city attorney.
Right.
Which was dated June 18th, 1998.
So a yes vote will rescind that.
You have the second.
I have a motion from Alderman Weston, a second from Alderman Lincoln. Do you want a roll call, Your Honor? Or do you want to?
Yes, on this we'll have a roll call vote.
Is a yes vote?
The yes vote is to rescind.
This is a
yes
vote
vote?
to rescind the contract.
Okay.
Alderman Lincoln.
Yes.
Alderman Sahaski.
Yes.
Alderman Weston.
Yes.
Alderman Sherman.
Yes.
Alderman Thompson.
Yes.
Alderman Woodward.
Yes.
Motion is carried, Your Honor.
Thank you. Now, the second motion?
Resolution would read that we would have a moratorium on any siting of cellular communications for a period of 60 days, and that any future siting be sent to the Environmental Standing Committee and then on to the Planning Commission for the recommendation to the council.
Would the future siting be during the 60-day period or after? I think the 60 days is so that the city can set up guidelines and regulations.
Right.
So I would scratch that last part.
I have some information that's coming from Michael Bragman's office in Albany, too, that'll be most helpful in the siting of these cellular antennas and cellular towers also. It was put in the mail on Monday.
Well, I have...
Do you want to change that, from moratorium for 60 days for the purpose of having the city draft legislation to provide guidelines and regulations?
The legislation would take care of the second part of it.
Okay.
So we're looking for a 60-day moratorium
Right.
for the purpose of drafting legislation?
Right, but with a recommendation that's sent to specific committees.
Of the Environmental Committee and...
Environmental Standing Committee and the Planning Commission for the recommendation.
And probably the Legislative Committee also, I would imagine.
Okay, wait a minute, my shorthand isn't up yet.
Don't we love bureaucracy?
All he's going to do is move the moratorium, and you can send the issue to the committee. That's probably the best way.
Okay, the moratorium, and it'll be referred to the purpose of drafting legislation after review of the Environmental Standing Committee, the Planning Commission, and the Legislative Committee.
Alderman Weston, the city attorney has made a recommendation.
You just move the moratorium, and then the mayor on his own can refer it to
Okay,
various committees.
all right,
It would probably make
okay.
more sense.
Okay. That was just my recommendation, but he can
Rather
certainly...
than- yeah, and
I don't want to cloud the
Okay.
motion.
I'm in agreement. I don't want to cloud the motion.
Okay,
But you want a moratorium for 60 days?
60 days.
All right, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I think one final comment, if I could. I certainly want to thank the people from Frontier Cellular for their presentation. I think it's so important that the council, that the people in the city of Fulton understand that the council is always concerned with their safety and welfare, and we're certainly not going to make any kind of decision that we think in any way whatsoever is going to be potentially a difficult situation for them. But at the same time, I think that you've got to realize that the cellular communications is going to go up somewhere. And my only thoughts on it were at the time, in fact, 4 years ago this came up, and my concern there was that if these were going to be put up, that they put on existing structures. Unfortunately, the existing structures happen to be near the schools. So there was some concern there, and I think what you heard tonight, I think the council has listened to the people, and but I still want to reassure you that there is, the difficulty is that it's going to be sited somewhere. And as opposed to existing structures, we see towers going up everywhere. So a better choice is always an existing structure, whether you can find one or not. I don't know. We'll see what the committees decide.
Thank you. The next three items are in regards to contracts for DOT drug and alcohol testing, medical evaluation examinations for police and fire candidates, and a contract for employee assistance program. I believe there are representatives from Lee Memorial Hospital that would like to make a presentation at this time. Go ahead.
Your Honor, just before we come up on this issue, the mayor has vetoed all three of those contracts in his letter, and they are notated in the minutes of the last meeting. Therefore, those contracts have no legal bearing whatsoever right now. It's like they never happened unless the Common Council, by 2/3 majority, overrides the veto.
Mr. Casey.
My name is Dennis Casey. I'm the Executive Director of A.L. Lee Memorial Hospital. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I will be brief. I have sent communications to all of the councilmen here. We believe that perhaps there may have been some miscommunication or lack of understanding of our interest in providing drug and alcohol testing and medical evaluation services for the fire and police department. I want to assure everyone here that it was not our intent to show lack of interest at all. We are very interested in providing these services, feel that these services should be provided by businesses, and in particular the hospital that is located in the city. Believe that business, wherever possible, should be conducted within the city, should be given to city business, and that Lee Memorial Hospital employs many employees, 350 or so, with an $8 million payroll. We believe that that payroll and those people should not be jeopardized by having services that can be delivered and quality services delivered by Lee Memorial Hospital. Those services should not be sent to other facilities outside of the greater Fulton area. I'd also like to comment that 6 years ago or 7 years ago, there was some discussion about hospital mergers, and the community wanted Lee Memorial to stay here in the city of Fulton. The board supported that, and Lee Memorial has continued to move forward. We believe that by sending services that the hospital can provide outside of the city, again, does not support that very public and strong stance that the board took. We do have some people here tonight from occupational medicine. If there are any specific questions, they may very well be able to answer them. Lee Memorial does not provide EAP or employee assistance program, and we therefore, as we do not provide it, certainly feel that that service ought to be provided by whomever the Common Council feels is the best organization to provide the service. Again, I'll be brief. I certainly thank you for the ability to speak with you tonight. Thank you for reconsidering the resolutions on the July 7th ballot, and let's stand for any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Dennis, I have one question, and you and I had talked about this. I've got a memo here from our personnel director that says Lee Memorial cannot provide the level of services for either the DOT drug alcohol testing pursuant to the federal mandate, nor our EAP, which we know about that. I'm not quite sure. That sounds like that we would not be legal if you did that. Is that?
It's my understanding that we can provide the services. We do provide services for drug and alcohol testing, provide them for several companies in this area. If there's something that I'm not aware of, then I certainly would like to be, and certainly would stand corrected if we cannot. But we are currently providing the services for several of the employers in this area.
Okay.
Mike, that has something...
I guess we'll let Ed answer that. What he meant by it.
Mr. Giroux? Can you, come on down. Why don't you approach this one and we'll see if we can't get this straightened out?
Duke it out.
Your Honor and Common Council members, although that is a bit of a contradiction of terms, you are by far not commoners, even though we call you Common Council members. I didn't plan on coming up here this evening to debate with Mr. Casey. Mr. Casey and I go back a few years. He's an upstanding member of the community, and by far and large, I did not cast any dispersions at Lee Memorial Hospital. But the products that we were looking to bid out, even though we are under no legal obligation to bid out those services, we were just looking to provide the very best of products and services for the employees here for the city of Fulton. The reason that we looked at Lee Memorial is because, obviously, as Mr. Casey had mentioned, if we have an opportunity to provide those services and the level of professional services that would be uncompromising, yes, let's look in our own backyard. The reason we looked elsewhere was because we wanted to be able to assure ourselves of the fact that we're getting the best product available. The 3 contracts that we had proposed and that I brought to this forum, I say 2 weeks ago, but it was actually a memo dated June 8th. I stand corrected on that. At that time, I had stated that Lee Memorial could provide 2 out of the 3 of those services. But after my discussion last week, I'm finding out that they could actually provide just 1 of those services, and that would be the pre-employment physical fitness or physical evaluation, medical evaluation for police and firefighter candidates. And the reason I state that is because of the fact that at this particular point in time, when it comes right down to the DOT federal mandate of the drug and alcohol screening, they can do and they can perform the test, as Mr. Casey had mentioned. They can do that. But they cannot do the other component of that testing, which is the actual random drawing of the personnel in a particular pool of candidates. That becomes quite critical because if we have to do it, we are not equipped at the present time.
Why can't they?
We don't have the computer software on where we can actually put the program together and we can randomly draw out our own employees.
Well, why can't they? If they have that...
I believe, and I'm not going to speak for Mr. Casey, I believe they are looking into that opportunity or the prospect of providing that service, but they don't have the capabilities of providing that now. Oswego Hospital, on the other hand, I don't pretend to stand here, and I'm not going to stand in before the director of that department, the occupational medicine, which is a young woman that I know of, Brenda LeMay. She is the director of that division, and she has shown me and demonstrated quite proficiently the abilities that they have with respect to the random drug and alcohol testing, all the software, the fact that they can provide the screening, the testing, as well as the random selection, and that's in a greater population, a larger pool. So they can provide the DOT testing, they can provide the DOT random drug and alcohol selection of those candidates, as well as the EAP program. So,
well, what I want to know is, from what I understand, Oswego does the counties. Did the county pay for that software, or did the Oswego Hospital?
That I can't answer. The county of Oswego does contract with Oswego Hospital.
Right.
The city of Oswego does contract with Oswego Hospital.
When is our contract up with the ones we're using right now?
Our contract was actually up in February. So we are without that. We are having that service provided with the same provider. I'm not real comfortable with that right now. It's not a well-kept secret. They know that we are looking elsewhere. They were under a Chapter 11 reorganizational structuring at the present time. This has been ongoing since March, so we've been looking elsewhere to have that service provided. And under that DOT federal mandate, we are obligated as an employer to provide the necessary backup in record keeping. We don't have that.
This is for the truck drivers she's talking about.
This is for the CDL, commercial driver's licensed employees.
How many drivers we got to fall under it?
We have 32 drivers, and then again we have 7 supervisors that all fall within the purview of the DOT regulation.
So we'd need software to cover about 40 people.
Well, and then again, we'd
do something random.
We'd be randomly selecting 50% of that population for drug and then again 10% for alcohol.
Well, why we got to do it with a computer with such a small number of people? I understand in accounting when
It has to be done in such a way, and I don't want to speak, you know, for those individuals that provide this service, and I would defer to Oswego Hospital if we've got representation here that could more eloquently speak to that rather than myself. But if you put it in a larger pool of personnel, then the risk of being drawn or randomly selected within that 4-month period of time, I believe, or 3-month period of time, it's on a quarterly basis, you would spread that out.
But if they haven't got it, they can't do it.
There's logic and there's rationale in this program itself, but I just don't want to compromise the integrity of having it provided by a professional service.
Okay.
The pre-employment physical evaluations, the medicals with the police officer and firefighter candidates, we have never, as a city of Fulton, to the best of my knowledge, and I can speak to the 3 years that I've been employed here, we have never contracted with either hospital.
Yeah.
We have left that up to the discretion of whoever wanted to provide it.
I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, in this memo I got, it says Lee Memorial cannot provide the level of service. In other words, what you're saying is they can't comply with the federal mandate.
At this particular
That's what it
time,
looks
that's
like.
correct. They cannot. They can provide us with the testing, but that's only a component of it. That's not the full program.
It's my understanding that, and we will be glad to research this further, it's my understanding that there are various options in ways which people can be selected randomly for the testing, that it need not necessarily be done by a computer. There are also industries that we have that have chosen to select the people to be randomly tested themselves. Again, another way of looking at it is if you have a smaller pool of people, you'll have better control of your people because they'll be tested more frequently. So I guess there's a couple of different ways of looking at it. If the council would like, then we will certainly further investigate it. And if the council would like us to do the random selection, then we'll see what we can do about doing that.
And these contracts aren't forever and a day.
There's pros. There's always more than one way to do something, and we'd be glad to look into that if that's what the Common Council wishes.
Joe?
Yeah. I'd like to speak on this. I don't get to speak on many issues, but the reason I'd like to speak on this is that I used to administrate this for the city when we went through North Central. In all due respect to Mr. Garrell, North Central used to provide an excellent service because, one thing, it was confidential. Any employee could go into their service and come out of it knowing that no one else knew anything about it. That's the basis for this whole EAP program. I'd like to ask Mr. Garrell, who the City of Oswego Hospital refers their people to, and I understand it's Bunner Street, is that correct?
If that is where the behavioral science
Is that where it
division
is?
is.
Well,
Joe, let me just correct you.
Was that in the contract?
It's in the contract. There's two different things we're talking about. We're talking EAP, which is a separate standalone contract and service, Joe. And the other part of that is the DOT random drug and alcohol testing. Altogether separate. That did not go into effect until 1/1/96. That portion of it you never administered. Okay? The EAP portion of it, you probably did so prior to my coming on board in the city.
That's what I'm talking about.
And that whole division, that whole service is being provided now. Years ago, when Mr. Hare had it, it went from Mr. Richard Hare. He left the company, and it went on with Sandy Herrig. She left the company, and then it's now with Donna Hopkins.
Right.
Because of the fact that it's been back and forth, I don't have the same level of confidence in that program as I once did.
I don't, I haven't been involved with it for several years, but I would have much more, me as an employee I'm speaking as, and I've had employees come to me, they have a problem with going to the City of Oswego Hospital to go through an EAP program. They would much rather go to a local hospital, and I don't understand why well, you haven't answered my question yet. Who does the City of Oswego Hospital refer these people to that need help? Is it Bunner Street?
It would have to go with their behavioral sciences or behavioral health division, which would be on Bunner Street at the present time. But I would much rather see us have our employees taken out of this community insofar as seeking that type of service to maintain that level of confidentiality.
I disagree, because what I would like to see is the people be referred to the Fulton Hospital, since it's a local hospital, and those people, the Fulton Hospital, can refer those people to the same type of people that are very, very confidential. I know this because I was through the North Central program, and I used to administrate it.
All right. At this time, you said earlier that you cannot provide the EAP program. So that one that is not one that you are prepared to deal with at this time?
That's correct.
Okay. The other two, you said you were, but there has to be possibly some further research done as to, for the drug and alcohol testing.
Well, I think there needs to be some further research done, Mayor, and I think there needs to be a better understanding of whether, in fact, by regulation, the random selection needs to be done by the organization doing the testing, or whether the individual company or the organization hiring us can do the random selection.
Your Honor, could I speak to that?
If the city would like us to do the random selection, then we're certainly open to looking into that and are interested in doing that.
Okay.
We have limited resources here in the city of Fulton. I think every one of us here, I know the department heads work, everyone works hard for the money, everyone puts in a full day and then some. If we were to put that onus of responsibility back over to some department over on this side, then that's just one added laboring ordeal that we're going to have to try to, channel, I guess, limited resources that we have as far as who's going to be actually responsible for the random selection. And then again, if we contract it out with a service that can't provide it. Mr. Casey, you could provide that service. That's correct. If we did send them over, you could do the drug and alcohol testing.
That's correct.
I know that.
Mr. Garrett, what's the frequency of our employees using the EAP program? Is it something that's used a lot?
I requested, obviously you can't breach, nor would I ever advocate breaching confidentiality. So as far as who's using the service, that's no one's business.
I see. Okay.
As far as a utilization review, I've requested that from our current provider, of which the response I got back was in your packet dated June 8th. They couldn't provide that because they've been in reorganizational structuring since, I believe it was March of this year.
Yeah, but EAP is not the issue here.
EAP, I don't believe was an issue, but I'm not going to speak for you, Mayor.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm trying to take these one at a time to make sure they don't get confused. With the drug and alcohol testing, you say that your hospital could do the random selection?
I'm saying that that we are, in my opinion, we're prepared to do that. If the city feels that it needs to be done through a computer process, then we are open to investigating the software that will do that.
Dennis, how long would it take you to look into that?
I really don't know, because I don't know how long it would take to get the quotes and actually investigate it. I would think
30 days.
30 days is a reasonable time.
I'd make a motion that we table that.
Are you currently?
Oh, go
Are you
ahead.
currently doing that for anybody else, the drug and alcohol with random selection?
Yes, we are.
So is it, you're not using a computer, obviously, but
Well,
you're still doing it, right?
No, but I believe that the companies that we do it for have decided to do the random selection themselves. They, the companies, have wished to do it. So we abide by their desire, and they do the selection.
They select those individuals out. They go through the motions, they go through the process, and they select those individuals out. They maintain the records. They keep all those federally mandated and required records as to who is selected, and then they contract out with Mr. Casey's hospital, and they do the actual testing. But that's only one of the components of it. As far as doing and performing the actual random drug and alcohol selection part of it, and then again all the record keeping, that's where we have a problem. That's why I sent to you, and it wasn't just on a whim. Like I said, it's difficult for me to come to this microphone this evening. It was difficult 2 weeks ago. It was difficult again as a real laboring task for those 2 or 3 months when I was reviewing, researching, investigating viable alternatives. So it's not very comforting for me to stand here in a community that I've been a part of and well qualified to speak to Lee Memorial and the fact that they have grown, they've diversified, and they are definitely a community hospital. I've been here for 21 years myself, and I've always lived here in Fulton in all of those 21 years. But after going through all this, I believe strongly that we are not in a position right now, well prepared, to compromise the integrity and the level of services being provided, and that's why my recommendation was such that we go at this particular time, not, again, forever and a day. We can always revisit and review this after a period of time, but to do it right now. The pre-employment physical exams, police and fire candidates, that one I would defer.
With the DOT testing?
Yes.
Who is doing it now?
The DOT drug and alcohol testing is being performed through North Central New York.
Which was the same one that was doing the EAP.
That's right, but I don't like the fact that we don't have any of that.
I understand this. I understand this.
Are they
What
handling
I'm
all
saying,
the record?
have they been doing it since their contract expired?
They have.
They have been doing, they've been...
But I'm not comfortable with no record keeping.
I understand the record keeping problems. I'm trying to get a feel on this. They have been doing the selection, they were doing the random selection?
Yes, yes they were.
Okay, do you know, were they doing it by computer?
They were doing it by a computer program, yes.
Okay. So, the record keeping that has been done, you are questioning right now,
I have
you're not
questions.
comfortable.
I'm not comfortable. I haven't been comfortable with it,
Okay.
Your Honor, and it provided I guess, a window of opportunity when they went into bankruptcy, and I was looking into changing at that particular time just before that.
Well, I understand that you have requested some information from them, and they have not been able to supply that information as in regards to usage and use the excuse of their bankruptcy.
That's correct.
Well,
more so with
unacceptable.
the EAP.
But what I'm wondering is even if they either get a computer program to do this or find another way to randomly select. Someone outside the city has been doing random selections.
Correct.
I believe that it's in everybody's best interest to continue that. I don't think that it is...
That's correct, and I'm not advocating that we do that.
Well, I want you to know how I feel on that I think that we should continue doing it the way we have been doing it, with someone else making the random selections, so that there can be no claims of bias or
impropriety,
anything at all.
That's right.
Right.
Or the appearance
That's
of it,
right.
and I agree.
We definitely need that.
I agree.
If you can do this, how long would you need to have something in place to be able to do this?
Mayor, I think that it was suggested that we have 30 days to investigate this. We will certainly investigate it within 30 days, and we'll be able to get back to the city within that time period.
How about 40 days? I'll make a motion that we table number 7 until the September.
Could I ask a question? Why don't we just put this out to competitive bid?
First council meeting.
And do what's in the best interest of the taxpayers.
It's not so much...
That's not a money issue,
Not
right?
so much a cost factor as it
The
is...
fees aren't a big part of it.
Money isn't the factor.
You're only paying for this to set up the policy. We've got a policy that's already in place that's been replicated by Oswego Hospital.
When they came back and you got information from both hospitals,
yes.
were the fee schedules comparable?
The fee schedule for the pre-employment physical exams for police officer and firefighter candidates, yes, as I stated 2 weeks ago, they were comparable.
Yes.
So some areas were a little bit higher, some were a little bit lower, but by and large, it wasn't a cost factor with that either.
Okay.
My primary concern is the level of services that are being provided, or that are the two entities are capable of providing. I'm convinced that right now, as we speak, and as I'm before this body today, Oswego Hospital can provide that level of service, and I'm more confident that they can do that right now. That's not to say Lee Memorial Hospital, after they've researched it and after they've reviewed it and investigated, and they get equipped to provide the random selection portion of this DOT mandate, then I wouldn't have any problem with revisiting that issue a year down the road.
Thank you very much.
I think the resolution to table it for 40 days to give
Give them till September 1st.
Lee Memorial Hospital an opportunity to increase their level of services, to make whatever changes they need to make are going to be in the best interest of the city of Fulton.
This is item number 7.
Yes, and we can address this at the September 1st council meeting.
I think there's a gentleman that wants to speak, maybe?
A couple people here that are interested in speaking. Defer to the lady from the hospital.
You know, you just can't write this down.
My name is Brenda LeMay, and I live here in Fulton, 309 South 12th Street. And answer some questions regarding drug and alcohol testing. The software is not provided by DOT. It is provided, it is purchased by the institution who does the random selection of the drug and alcohol testing.
Excuse me, you want to pull your mic down?
Okay. Sorry. Did you hear what I said about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I didn't think the DOT provided it. I wondered if the county of Oswego.
No, they did not. Oswego Hospital has purchased that equipment to do the random selection.
Okay.
And we have two consortiums. One is the Department of Transportation guidelines, and the other random selection are non-DOT testing. So there's, two different areas. The Department of Transportation recommends at least 50 participants in their DOT consortium to have a fair randomization for their, for testing and selection of their employees. I want to make a comment on EAP, off-site evaluations. There has been sensitivity in both communities regarding services being offered at Bunner Street, and that we have made arrangements that EAP referrals come to a number through occupational health services, and evaluations will be done and are being done off-site of Bunner Street, either in private businesses, if they've provided a room where they'd like this to be held, or in an office space at the Occupational Health Department at Oswego Hospital, so there isn't that stigma and reluctance maybe to come forth if there's a problem that maybe isn't picked up by the random selection. I just wanted to make one comment that Oswego Hospital has been very aggressive in the last 5 to 6 years in occupational medicine. We have over 150 customers in the Oswego County area. We're number 1 now for drug and alcohol testing for in our community for DOT testing, and that we pride ourselves. We have a lot of unique services. We have one-stop shopping. We're able to provide drug testing results within a 24-hour turnaround, which we feel is unique to a lot of programs. And if there's any other questions, I'd be more than glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. My name's John LeMay, 309 South 12th Street. Obviously, being a taxpayer of Fulton and also having ties to Oswego Hospital, this kind of puts me in between everything. The Honorable Mayor and Councilman, I'm observing this whole scenario, and it becomes somewhat apparent to me that you people are creating an awful lot of stress on yourself for what seems to me like very little reason, inasmuch as you've got Oswego Hospital willing to provide you with a contract with the services that you need immediately. You have your own people telling you that they provide the best service and all of the services here at once. What is wrong with this simple solution of letting Oswego Hospital take it for a year, since the county has got the trust in them to let them do that? And then if Mr. Casey's prepared next year, when it comes up, then let him bid on the program also. I understand and respect that we should keep business here in the community, since I'm a local taxpayer also. On the other hand, you're asking a local entity to do half a job, which is causing, within your own administration, stress for sending employees here for one service and there for another. Why not just award it to one for a year? That's all I say.
Thank you.
Being a county employee, if I could, Your Honor, the Oswego Hospital does do a very professional job in their drug and alcohol testing. Being a county employee, I've had to do the service, and they're very, very competent, and they do a very good job.
We have a motion to table item number 7 in regards to the contract for DOT drug and alcohol testing.
Till the September 1st council meeting.
Yes. For the September 1st council meeting.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We do have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Right here, I oppose it.
Motion's carried, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, for item number 8, the medical evaluations of police and fire candidates. Does anyone wish to offer a resolution?
I'll offer that we award that to Lee Memorial Hospital.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Right here, I'm going to oppose it.
Okay.
Motion's carried, Your Honor.
In the item number 9.
While I'm at it, how about Oswego Hospital for number 9?
Is there a second?
I'll second it, Your Honor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is in regards to the employee assistance program.
That the employee assistance contract be awarded to Oswego Hospital.
I'll vote yes on that one.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried.
Motion's carried.
I just want to thank Mr. Garrow for all the work that he spent on this particular subject. I think the council is always thankful that they have so many good employees, so many good department heads, commissions and committees that make recommendations. We don't always use them, but it gives us so many more people and so much more information. So I appreciate the work he did on this. I certainly appreciate the comments from the hospital administrators and heads of the auxiliary that made contacts with the council, that sent letters and called. They showed a genuine concern for their local hospital, and I think that they deserve a lot of credit for coming forward with that. Thanks.
Next item.
Resolved that the clerk be authorized and directed to advertise for sealed bids on or before August 4th up to 4 p.m. and to be publicly open at 4:15 p.m. for furnished in the city of Fulton with architectural lighting as specs drawn by the City of Fulton Engineering Department. Be it further resolved, the council reserves the right to reject any and all bids that are not in the best interest of the City of Fulton or they deemed to be too high.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next
Notation that the appointment by Mayor Stafford of David Geyer, 828 Holly Drive, the Fulton Housing Authority to fill the expired term of Mr. Bernie Scout effective July 16, 1998, and to expire July 15, 2003 is entered into the minutes of this council meeting of July 21st as a matter of record.
I'll move it.
No motion
That's a
necessary.
notation.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Next item.
Whereas a quota of Syracuse sand and gravel has been awarded by the County of Oswego, whereas the City of Fulton wishes to join the County of Oswego in accepting the low bid of Syracuse sand and gravel, now therefore be resolved that the City of Fulton hereby joins the County of Oswego in accepting Syracuse sand and gravel and hereby authorizes the Commissioner of Public Works to purchase sanding from time to time without further resolution of the council.
Wasn't this pushed off from a different meeting?
Right.
What was the hang-up?
Yeah.
What was the hang-up?
We were looking for recommendations from DPW Commissioner,
Yeah.
and he has given that.
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Okay. Resolved that a proposed change to a site plan for Kim Doyle for her business located at 201 Academy Street be referred to the Planning Commission at their next meeting.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Resolve that we accept the quote of Avatar Electronics for $1,439.26 for computer upgrades at City Clerk's office, and be it further resolved, the City Chamberlain transfer said amount from the A1325 account to the A1410 account for said cost.
Motion?
Everybody's looking at me. I'll move that one too.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We stumble over those tough ones, those tough decisions.
Motion carried.
We need a motion to go to executive session?
Motion to go to executive session?
Why not?
I'll second it.
Make one statement.
Good, sure.
I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being of one mind and one accord, for being the men that I know you are, and hopefully this means we're going to start moving towards an independent city and start carrying our own weight and stop taking help from the outside. I'm here if anyone needs help. Be willing to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you, Al.
We have a motion to go to executive session. Do we have a second? Get a second. We're all set? Okay.
Third. Literally more fingers. Yeah. Appropriate time for...
What the hell they do?
They got lost.
Is that on camera? I was going to say, can we
Don't turn
erase
it up
that?
yet. Edit the tape. Edit the tape.
I see our Chamberlain is still here.
Is that guy sleeping in here?
Pining away for the $1,400 we just took out of his lineup.
No loitering.
No loitering.
I make a motion, we refer almost everything to the Planning Commission.
I would like to ask Mr. Fiorini while he's here, since we are still on the clock, I guess. At the last Planning Commission meeting, you said that you had anticipated a special meeting coming up to address Mr. Porter and Carvel's before the next regular meeting, which would be the second Monday in August.
If he asked for a special meeting, we would consider it.
Could you let us, or at least let me know when that's going to be? Because we did have the Doyle property up today, and we referred that to you for recommendation as well at your next meeting, which would not necessarily be your next regular meeting in August. So if you do see fit to have a special meeting...
At the special, we would also include whatever might be on the agenda.
Very good. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Wait a minute. I got comments.
Oh, boy.
Comments. There's nobody here, Mark. Do you notice?
I don't care.
Are you sure?
I was on vacation during the last meeting, and I was watching a film after I got back, and there was a Mrs. Foley from State Street that was complaining about parked cars parking on the sidewalks. Well, I've complained. There was Dave Cotton has also made the same complaint, and I've notified the police department 3 different occasions on this, and obviously they don't feel that things are being corrected.
The day after that last meeting, we had a department heads meeting. I brought that up to the chief of police. I advised him that I wanted, we had received complaints on this, and that I wanted increased enforcement. And he said, yes, that they would definitely do that, and be prepared for the phone calls.
See, I haven't been following up on these little skirmishes with paper trails, but I'm going to start doing that just so that they know, people in my ward know that I'm actually acting on it. The other thing is that I'm getting complaints about speed on 1st Street and on 4th Street. So I had work orders set up for speed traps on both streets, and I'm still getting complaints on both streets about speed on both streets. It's just my opinion. I'm not here to try to point fingers at the police department, but it's my opinion that if, I guess what I hear is that they're very busy, whatever, don't have the manpower, whatever, but my belief is that if there was a stronger presence, that maybe some of the other things that they're skirmishing with would disappear. I've got a situation on 3rd Street where I've got a sheriff that lives there, his car is there, and there used to be a lot of, monkeying around in that area, but a lot of that's died off. So I don't know. I don't have the total solution here. I'd like to see something done there, but, I don't know if that's...
Well, once you put in a work order, they need to respond to that. So we'll have Scott check and see what the status of those work orders are.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question as well, since Mark Spawn has told you that he will step up enforcement with parking over sidewalks and parking in the right-of-way.
No, parking, blocking sidewalks.
Okay, that's the one actually I'm looking for, parking, blocking sidewalks. Will there be any discretion with that enforcement? Because the one item that keeps being referenced is on West 1st Street with the police car. It's my understanding there's a policeman that lives on West 1st Street. There's always a police car blocking the sidewalk. Is that correct? I mean,
The K-9.
Yeah, the K-9 car parks over the sidewalk, and everybody says, how come of course the city isn't going to enforce this because their own policemen park at their house over the sidewalk. So
I will bring that up to the chief of police.
If you could bring that up, I'd appreciate it.
Yes.
You know something, Your Honor? There are some places in the city, like in the wintertime, that's the only place people can park. Is the only place, unless you want to tell them to get rid of their cars and
You may remember, I spent a couple of years
I know.
doing this, and I realized that we have a real problem here.
I know.
And if you don't use the city right-of-way to park, in the wintertime especially, you have no place to park.
That's right.
But I think for right now, for all intents and purposes, this is July 21st, and right now, we can send the message now.
Maybe we ought to try to do something with the code that addresses the time of year. I don't know, could be,
We may have to do something like that.
Yes. Because there's no reason for anybody parking on the sidewalk in the middle of summer, no. But in the wintertime,
Just refer to the planning commission. It's easy.
Yeah.
Very good.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
I'm saying that because Archie's here.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
I think that now.